It's time for Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott, inviting the atheist, agnostic, and skeptic to examine for themselves the evidence for the Christian faith. We are all limited by what we do not know and by the things we think we know but are not true. Dr. Joe Mott earned his PhD at LSU and was a distinguished math professor at Florida State University for 38 years, helping to write 3 math textbooks and authoring over 30 research articles in math. He is now the host of this radio program, Defending and Commending the Faith. Here is Joe Mott.
Hello to everyone. Welcome to the program. Followers of Christ are still being called into action for defending and commending the Christian faith. In the previous episode, we were discussing Michael Behe's introduction of the concept of irreducible complexity of systems. Many evolutionary biologists disagree with Behe's conclusion, not because they deny the complexity of living systems, but because they argue that Behe's premise about how complex systems evolve is mistaken. Now let us leave that discussion until the matter gets settled. There is always a pushback when something is challenged. Advocates have too much invested to give up easily. Ever since Darwin first published his Origin of Species, his defenders' favorite tactic against critics have been to use the process with a Latin name ad hominem, which means attack against the person. For example, Sir Richard Dawkins, the indefatigable defender of evolution and former professor of biology at the University of Oxford, wrote, "It is absolutely safe to say that if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked, but I'd rather not consider that." In the book Darwinism Under the Microscope by James P. Gillis, M.D., and Tom Woodward, Ph.D., and in the chapter by Dr. Mark Hartwig called Challenging Darwin's Myths, is stated that, quotes, "Darwin himself used this tactic against some of the greatest scientists of his day, accusing them of superstition and religious bias," end quotes. Hartwig also says, California's science education guidelines instruct teachers to respond to dissenting students by saying, "I understand that you may have personal reservations against this scientific evidence, but it is scientific knowledge about which there is no reasonable doubt among scientists in this field." Hartwig then adds his personal comments. "But is Darwinism so obviously true that no honest person could doubt it? Or alternatives so unscientific that no reasonable person could embrace them? The answer to both questions is a resounding no." Hartwig continues, "Time has not been kind to Darwinism, however. Paleontologists have certainly found more fossils, but these fossils have only deepened the problem. What paleontologists discovered was not gradual change, but stability and sudden appearance. It seems that most fossil species appear all at once, fully formed, and change very little throughout their existence. Large evolutionary jumps are anathema to good Darwinists because they look too much like miracles. Reptiles simply don't hatch birds. That's why the Cambrian explosion remains so troubling to Darwinists. What paleontologists find isn't just the sudden appearance of a few new species. They encounter species so utterly distinct, they have to be placed in completely different phyla. Even Oxford zoologist and prominent Darwinist Richard Dawkins has remarked, "It is as though they were just planted there without any evolutionary history." Darwinists, of course, express confidence that future discoveries will clear up the mysteries. But so far, the research has only deepened them. I would say confidence is not evidence. An article from darkquestions.org indicates that flaws in the theory of evolution can be separated into three basic areas. I have added a fourth category. First, there is the apparent contradiction between punctuated equilibrium, advocated by Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge, and gradualism, advanced by Charles Darwin. Punctuated equilibrium considers events like the Cambrian explosion in the fossil record and attempts to incorporate it into the Darwin theory. But there are flaws with punctuated equilibrium as well. Second area into which flaws can be separated is the problem in projecting microevolution plus chance into macroevolution. Macroevolution has never been observed, so it is more than a flaw. It is an overactive imagination. Allow me to discuss some aspects of chance. First, the chances for all practical purposes are virtually zero. I can prove that if someone in the audience wishes to hear about it. Evolutionists think Darwinism is a science, but science is not based on chance, but on regularity. Second, chance is not a cause. The only causes are either natural forces or intelligent ones. Chance is not a force, neither is it powerful. Chance only possesses randomness. Chance does not have a mind, so it cannot be intelligent. It is probably important to remind ourselves about the scientific method. It is a process that includes several steps. Step 1, first an observation or question arises about a phenomenon. Step 2, a hypothesis is formulated to explain the phenomenon. Step 3, the hypothesis is used to make predictions about other related occurrences or to predict the results of new observations quantitatively. Step 4, finally these predictions are tested through experiments or further observations to either support or refute the hypothesis. Generally, in the first edition of The Origin of Species, Darwin made claims with no supporting evidence. How can that version of Darwin evolution be a science if it does not use the scientific methodology? Darwin's theories should be subject to the scientific methods, yet there are no published experiments that clearly show one species actually evolving into another species. Darwin essentially admits this in forgotten passages in many of his writings. This is not about faster rabbits escaping the predators more easily, or the breeding of different dogs into another shape size, trait, quality, or look, genetically speaking, a rabbit is still a rabbit, and a dog is still a dog. Survival of the fittest on a short timeline is universally accepted. But this is more about major transitions. No scientist has ever observed a natural collection of organic chemicals spontaneously linking up to form a protein, or thousands of different proteins, fats, sugars, and minerals combining to create a functional cell, or millions of different cells fusing into a jellyfish, or anything remotely similar to an amphibian, or a frog transitioning to a lizard, or a bear transitioning to a whale, or an ape giving birth to a human. If Darwinian research cannot get beyond step 1 of observation, then step 4 of the basic tenets of the scientific method can never happen. If fossils can be counted as step 1, but since there is no proven transitional species, and therefore no step 4 where tests or predictions are performed, then the scientific methodology is not being followed. The scientific method requires the vigorous testing of any hypothesis. If you were to observe an oil rig standing in the water of the Gulf of America, would you assume it happened by natural means or by design? Design, of course, hands down. And so it goes with living beings, who I suspect are more complicated than all the oil rigs in the world put together. Professor William Dembski from Baylor University is a mathematician, philosopher, and theologian known for his work on intelligent design. He holds dual doctorates in mathematics and philosophy, along with a Master of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary. Dembski has authored several books on intelligent design, including The Design Inference and Intelligent Design, The Bridge Between Science and Theology. He has also been a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture. Dembski's work has been influential in the discussion of the relationship between science and religion, particularly in the context of intelligent design. Dembski defines intelligent design as natural systems that cannot be explained in terms of undirected natural forces, yet exhibit features which, in any other circumstance, we would attribute to intelligence. He points to the faces of 4 United States presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt at Mount Rushmore. Given the natural forces or erosion, wind and rain, plus the possible tectonic plate shifting, it remains highly improbable that nature could have produced such likenesses. One should apply similar logic to everything we see in nature. When a species of animal or plant is too complicated to come about by chance, one must conclude it must be guided by an intelligent designer. Ask any medical researcher how DNA, or more specifically our genes, came into existence, and you will likely get nothing more than a blank stare. Everyone agrees that the Great Pyramids of Egypt did not happen by accident. Notably, one cell of the human body is vastly more complicated than any pyramid. The book, Signs of Intelligence, Understanding Intelligent Design, is a collection of essays that provide an introductory overview of the Argument for Intelligent Design. It is authored by William Dembski and includes contributions from key players in the intelligent design movement, such as the University of California law professor Philip Johnson, the Lehigh University microbiologist Michael Behe, and the philosopher and historian Stephen Meyer. The book contains this quotation from Stephen Meyer: "Intelligent agents have unique causal powers that nature does not. When we observe effects that we know only agents can produce, we rightly infer the presence of prior intelligence, even if we did not observe the action of the particular agent responsible. Since DNA displays an effect, namely information content, that in our experience only agents can produce, intelligent design and not apparent design stands as the best explanation for the information content in DNA." Allow me to close this episode by reminding you, exercise daily. Walk with God.
Thank you for listening to Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott, a production of Wave 94 Radio in Tallahassee, Florida. If you have any questions or comments for Joe, please forward them to Doug Apple at Wave94 at this email address, dougapple@wave94.com. And be sure to join us every Monday evening at 6:45 p.m. on Wave 94 and subscribe through your favorite podcast app. Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott.